He is a best-selling author. He's also a self-made billionaire. So without further ado, I'd like to actually bring in my next guest, which is Dr. Jim White. So g'day, Jim. How are you?
Good afternoon, Craig. How you doing? I should say good evening to you. I'm doing well, thank you.
It's good. I hope they say successful businessmen are up early, so I hope that you're already up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Is it just after 4 there?
It is. And this is the normal day for me, so I am not early. That's what you got to do. You 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. so yes, it's not early whatsoever for me. So I was backstage, as you know, listening to your interview. Very, very interesting interview. So good stuff.
So I hope this interview is equally as valuable. And I appreciate, again, you're up quite early there in the US and you have just released a book. You have a number of successful books. It's not the first book that you've actually written. I'll just throw that up there and see if we can't share some of your books. I think they're down the bottom there for people to have a quick squiz at. So you've got What's My Purpose, which you wrote, I think, at the start of the decade. Is that correct?
That is correct. I released that, What's My Purpose, in 2007.
Yeah, and we can see, manage your stress and live your life. You've got Opportunity Investing, which I do want to talk with you about, and also your Leadership and Influence book. And now, obviously, this latest book, which was released Wednesday, which is Broken America. So let's get into that, because that is something that you have decided that you need to give your voice to and lend your voice to, and you've already had a number of people of key influence who have read your book, including Leon Panetta, the former Secretary of Defense and Director of the CIA in the US. So let's talk about that book and the motivation behind it and why you felt it was necessary to give your voice to this.
Well, as you stated, Craig, the United States, in my opinion, is going through a time of dysfunction that we haven't seen in decades. I am a Vietnam veteran. I have a disability. I did 2 tours in Vietnam in the mid-'60s. I am a country boy, if you will. I was born in rural South Carolina, very poor, and I credit a lot of my opportunities through military. It gave me an opportunity for education. So the U.S. that I know afforded a lot of opportunity. If you're willing to focus, set your goals, and network, and just work hard and have what I saw a compass of morality. So I'm going to be 72 years old in just 2 weeks, and watching what's unfolded in the United States, it stressed me. So wee hours in the mornings, and what am I going to do? Am I going to sit on the sidelines, or am I going to get involved? So therefore, I said I'm going to get involved, and in a way that I never have from a political standpoint. So I wrote the book to Broken America, 10 Guiding Principles. And these principles, you're going to be familiar with them, but what a lot of people do, they do not focus on them. So I believe if you could start with these principles one at a time, understanding what they're doing, and for everybody, that's the key. We have I'm going to use the word two-party system in America. I think both sides has room for improvement, and I've never seen such polarization. We used to be arguably the greatest nation with leadership around the world. I don't think we are anymore. I get a lot of feedback, especially from the veteran community. And thank you for the book. I also get a lot of feedback saying, geez, we're still the greatest America in the world. Well, a leader in the world, I should say, excuse me. Well, yes, but we can be better. We're just a few days away for a new national election, and in America, and I think our president number 45 is not of the, in my opinion, the character or showing the leadership that we should be showing, and I think it's really coming to surface, and this COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, I believe your word is your bond. I believe everything is built on trust. And I was hearing you talk about the work you did in sports. It's all about trust. It's all about building that relationship and trust. And sometimes as a leader, you've got to stand up and speak truth. It may not be very popular, but you got to take that leadership role. And you also need to understand it's not about you. You got to leave your ego at the door sometimes. And this is certainly not the case in our current political atmosphere in the United States.
So you hitting three key words there that resonate, I think, with from an observer, myself being here in Australia and looking into the US political system and not completely understanding it. You mentioned principles, values, and leadership, and I think what's being demonstrated, and this is my opinion, there's people who obviously love Trump or hate Trump, is very polarizing, but I think that whenever there's a lack of true leadership, leadership's about bringing people together and not being divisive and things of that nature. Those things can only occur when there are values and or principles. If you're not principled and you're not valued, then you're not striving to try and pass those as a leader on to other people. So is that why you're trying to fill the void with Broken America, this book, and actually put forward some principles, because the leadership is lacking in delivering the things that most presidents would be expected to just deliver to people as part of the job?
Absolutely, Craig. I believe that we're void of those basic values currently. We have a system that in America right now that it's okay to lie. It's okay to stretch the truth. It's okay to have no empathy. Well, those things are not okay. They're not okay. They're not okay. Actually, any place on the globe, they're not okay. But we have got to look ourselves in the mirror, and all of us, all Americans, and everybody around the world. What are we doing to make a positive impact on every citizen? And what are we doing to have the globe to look at, have all of us to look and say, I have respect. I know there's tough decisions to be made, but we can disagree. We should be disagreeing with civility. We should be listening to all people from all walks of life. It just breaks my heart sometimes when I see on the news the different abuses that may be playing out in our law enforcement. Law enforcement, I'm supportive of law enforcement. However, you've got, from our Black community, all types of cultures in the United States. We got to realize that we are a nation of immigrants, and we if there's no checks and balances, and if you get to the point where you say, well, the president of the United States can stand there and tell all of these untruths and has no moral compass. Well, so can I, because that's the reason it's so important that we have a leader in position of power that does have values and moral compass. And that's the reason I started the book off with the U.S. Constitution. I said our founding fathers and founding mothers, this is where we started. And I don't know, a lot of people in America think, well, there's no way that we can ever fall from grace, if you will. Well, there is. There's no guarantee that you're going to remain the greatest nation on earth if you start eroding yourself inside. it's just not going to happen. It's there. There's no guarantee. You got to get up and work hard every day at making a better day, being able to have the message. And that's all of us. That's the business leaders. That's the political leaders. That's the professional athletes, if you will. I heard your story when you talk about I think the athletes talking to the young people, talking about the social media that you referred to in the previous session. Well, that was great because everybody's got to be a role model. You need to be a role model, and athletes especially has such an impact on younger generations, right? And so it's I believe these 10 principles are extremely critical, not only for America but around the globe.
I will ask you to mention a couple of those principles that you see as important, but what I want to talk about too is you do have the Constitution. One thing that Australia doesn't have, we're based on the Westminster system here, so our Constitution doesn't have a Bill of Rights. Things are based on what we call conventions, just understood rules, not written rules. You guys have written rights into a constitution, but here's something from an observer, again, looking at everything that's going on with COVID is in the US, is that people who, and it's the mask debate, is people who say that they have rights to do things, but what they fail to recognize is that all rights have, which marry to them, responsibilities. And that a right isn't automatic unless you understand the responsibility that goes with having that right. So, controversy around, say, gun rights in the US, you have the right to own a gun. You just don't have the right to run around shooting everyone with it. So, you have a responsibility when you have that power to do that. And freedoms of speech is the same. People who are picking sides, I guess, with freedom of speech, think that it's just right to say whatever you like without worrying about the impacts it has on individuals. But at the end of the day, no, you can say things, but you have to recognize that you have a responsibility to have discourse which is fair, and it can be truthful and painful, but it doesn't have to be vitriol and hurtful and targeting. And interestingly, I have a friend that works in the anti-bullying space, and he actually spoke to me around politics and said, in our schools, we have these anti-bullying policies, yet our politics plays out daily on a daily basis where you've got two sides. We have a two-party system here too, where they're just bullying each other. And yet they're the ones telling everyone in school to stop bullying. So if the leaders of our country can't not be bullies, how can it be expected of the next generation and our children? So I have a question for you, because it's come up, and I think it's one of the justifications for your book, is around your grandchildren and the legacy you leave them. You look back to the forefathers and founding fathers of the US and said, is this what they wanted for our country? And now you are asking the question, is this what we want for the future generations that come after us? We're at a pivotal point in time, is what you said. And how do you want to address the need to ensure that the country that you have built your wealth on is there for the future generations?
What a great question, Craig. Absolutely. And that is the point I'm making when I start with the U.S. Constitution and the amendments. And that's our foundation. As you said, that's the rules, the written rules, and the basic values that's set out, that's served us well for over 200 years now. But we're on the 13th day of September 2020. We're at that crossroads. And that's the question we have. What do we want to leave to generations to come? And that's the reason it is absolutely essential that every American realize that I'm going to speak in business vocabulary for a moment, that you are the shareholder, you are the citizen of this country. You cannot remain on the sideline and then complain. If we don't realize that we have got to start with the basics, just like you were talking about your friend in the bullying space. We start at birth, and if we can't get past, and the first thing we got to do, we got to fire this current president. Trump must go. He's got some good policies in some areas, but he has no moral compass and the erosion. And I did an interview a couple of days ago where the host says, I have young teens at home. I have teens that's watching the president. I have teens that's watching the president when he's going out, President of the United States, Donald Trump, doing his rallies. There is no mask. He's bringing people together. He's putting people in harm's way. He's asking people to show up strictly for his ego. Now, that's the thing that we got to do. We have got to stop it. Is it easy? Absolutely not, Craig. Is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. We didn't get here overnight. We've got to do it one day at a time. And doing the work that you're doing, just bringing awareness, just the conversation we're having, I think it's so valuable because we are a one people globally, not just the United States and Australia and New Zealand. We are one people. We are here. We got the DNA. We're walking. We have the rights to all the human rights that we should. So it starts now. And like I said, I wished I had a quick fix. I don't. I don't think there is such a thing. I think what we got to do is just realize we got a problem. Now, in the United States, it's amazing to me and how many people actually support. I think that's a bigger problem, a systemic problem, where you've got maybe say over 40% of the United States that supports this behavior. Whoa, that's the problem. And that's when I go back. We got to start at the beginning. We got to start changing that. White supremacy in the United States is another. That is currently the largest single threat, according to the NSA, the National Security Council in the United States, is white supremacy. How are these people being born in the United States and come up with these beliefs in the greatest freedom country in the world? So I'm not sure I've answered your question spot on, but it's one day at a time. It's got to start from birth, and we got to start working hard. And it's just like becoming a master at anything that you do. Yes.
I think the answer's in the answer you gave, and I think it comes down to belief. Right. That people have been indoctrinated and asked to believe in certain things. And when you're asked to believe in something, it is a picking sides, because you have to then disagree with something else. And I think that what leaders do is they find followers that believe the same thing as them. So what you've got to do is change somehow, or create a narrative, which I think your book's doing, to change the discourse to something else, to find and give them something else to believe in. And you're coming back to the basics of what the founding fathers arrived at. Now, there was some tricky, they arrived at that around like slavery, which was, right. It's still the same. It's still the same. You'd think that hundreds of years on that it would be something that has been fixed and resolved, but there's obviously been an undercurrent and an underlying, which people in America and some people in America feel has never truly been rectified. And that happens here in Australia too with our Indigenous populations. And unless you can't walk in someone else's shoes. So you can only trust that what they're saying to you is true. So it's like a customer, you have obviously clients. If a customer's telling you there's a problem, even if you don't think there's a problem, you still listen to the customer to say, well, 10 customers are telling us there's a problem here. So in the case of Black Lives Matter and people saying that there's an issue with racism in America or in the police system, whether you believe it or not, there are some people who actually do. Therefore, you have to try and work out why is that the case? What is causing them to believe that, even if it's not true? If stats don't show it as true, which I think the stats sort of lean towards that there is systemic racism. So I think ultimately your book is trying to change the narrative. I just hope that it can break through all the other noise that is in the US right now to give those principles. So let's talk about a couple of these principles. I've got some questions too, so
Sure.
we'll go to questions, but what do you want to do first? Do you want to go to a couple of guest questions, or would you like to talk to the principles? You don't care?
I don't care. If we got people ask questions, let's see if we can answer some of the questions.
So we have a healthcare system here in Australia that is universal. So I don't know whether the United States, you hear this debate all the time in the US, and it seems like it's always encased and enclosed in the US. Like we changed our gun laws after a mass shooting here, which everyone was up in arms. We don't allow semi-automatic weapons to be owned by the general public, and people are still allowed to shoot. They're still allowed to own guns. They're just not allowed to own military-grade weapons. New Zealand did the same after their crisis. They had a shooting. Australian actually shot up a mosque. They've changed their gun laws. So we didn't wait for it to happen a second or a third time when we had Port Arthur massacre. People could go up and have a look at that, where a man went into a recreational facility and just shot the place up and killed, dozens of people. So we changed our gun. We had leadership at the time that would change the gun laws, and we still allowed to own guns, just not semi-automatics that are going to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. And we also have a health system that is universal, that I can go to a doctor now and I might pay a small fee, but I'm looked after, and we have a public hospital system where our costs are looked after. I don't, and I think Australians and those around the world don't understand it. So the question is, why has Trump tried to take away or taken away Obamacare when it sounds pretty much like the Australian health system?
My response to that can be in one word. Trump has tried to take away every initiative, every policy that any previous president in modern history has been able to achieve, and specifically Barack Obama. He has tried to remove Obamacare. He has not been 100% successful. There are still areas of Obamacare that are in place. There's also in Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, different cases in regards to Obamacare, but he has not been removed 100% yet. But he does so because his ego, it's got to be all about him. Only I can fix the problem. And that's what our president thinks today, which is absolutely just crazy, crazy thought.
Yeah, so it's interesting because our systems are so different. They call out the Democrats for being like socialists, but a good amount of the world actually, like we have free education here too, and we do have nominal payment for university. Like it's not totally free, but we have a lot of we're not as extreme as what we see in the United States, where people are mortgaging their basically their education and starting behind the eight ball before they even get a job. And here in Australia, our system, and I think this is important. I don't think Americans actually look outside their own backyard to realize that the world actually has a lot of the things that you guys are still arguing about, like what we don't want it. And they use scare tactics. But Australia, what makes Australia a wonderful country is that you can do both. Capitalism and a degree of social safety net can exist and coexist. And in fact, most countries it actually does. And the US, I think it's driven by capitalism. And you're a self-made billionaire. You've earned, so you understand capitalism better than anything else. I want to move on a little bit. We'll come back to the principles. I do want to get to them, and I appreciate your time. So I've given you the last interview tonight because I thought we take it as long as we more or less can.
My pleasure.
No worries, but I will get on to the principles actually now because I just forgot what I was going to ask. But do you want to give us a couple of the principles that you think are valuable to helping the United States move forward in what you obviously see as a crisis of leadership?
Yes. The first principle that I led with in the book is called vision. Well, vision is where are we going, as you well know. What's the end of the thing? And that is so important to define that, where it's a personal vision, a vision for your organization, or a vision for a country. So that's the first thing. Right now, it's Donald Trump's vision, not America's vision. So I talk about that. Without clear vision, strategy is just a guess. So that's a big one. The other one is, I'm going to go to principle. I got it listed at number 3, and it's called truth seeking. Well, you just laid out Australia and other countries around the world has certain policies and certain benefits that the United States doesn't happen. And what a concept. Listen to other people, right? Learn. So truth seeking. A house cannot be built on sand, and a house cannot be built on lies. So we've got to seek the truth. The other one that I had in there, courage, number 4. I said number 4 in the courage. And each one of these principles, as you know, I go in detail what it is not, and I give examples of what's occurring so people can hopefully relate to it. And I try to go right down in the middle. This book is not about Donald Trump. This book is about, it could be any name in the White House. It could be any party. I would be saying the same thing. So vision, truth seeking, in the second one, leadership, which we talked about, leadership. And I define leadership as inspiring self-motivations in others, not threats, not fear. And Donald Trump, just like Nixon, Nixon believed that fear was the most powerful emotion that you could use. So does Trump. Fear. Well, no. You've got to inspire people. You got to tell the truth. So those are the things. And I went on to like about integrity, and I'm looking at, and I say tolerance and equality. Tolerance. We've got to be tolerant of all people. And again, communication in that tolerance is the ability to listen, not just hear. Are you hearing what people are saying? Just listening. So that tolerance and equality, and then respect. You and I have never met. However, this great technology we have, I have a huge amount of respect for what you do, what your other guest does, what your listeners do, because you're committed, you're passionate about truth seeking. You're passionate about giving people opportunities, having voices. This is what your network does. Give people voices to be to express themselves. Why? Again, I think because you're doing something. You want to help people. You want to help Australia. You want to help everybody around the world to be a better place to live for the family. And the question we talked about earlier: what's our generation going to look like? So what we're doing today, what you're doing, what other people around the world are doing in our podcast, it's so valuable to get the message out. And the other one is we talked about a lot about capitalism. You got to have you need the money, right? It's got to make this thing run. It's not a bad word. When I released the book, I got just some heart wrenching feedback. I got a call from a 88-year-old Korean veteran, and I've never had anything like it. He read an article in the USA Today, an op-ed that I wrote in the USA Today, which released on 9/11. And he read it, and he searched it out, and he called. He left me a voice message, and he says, the best article I've read in 20 years, and this is not about my ego. That's not where I'm going with that. He says, thank you for standing up as a business person, because some of your customers may not like what you're doing, so you're putting your livelihood at risk, if you will. And I did have that discussion with my team. And then he goes on to say, I have injuries. I have injuries from Korea. And our VA system, I can't get the medical care that I need. I can't, and to me, it's just heartbreaking. And especially our veterans, veterans from all nations. And if they serve their country, especially, they should be able to get the basic health care. And that goes back to one of your viewers' question about did Obama take it away. So all of those things are so important, and that's what's intertwined throughout the book, Craig, is to try to give people opportunity. Are these 10 principles read the words, are they going to be new to people? No, probably not. Probably they've been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years and thousands of years. But again, it's right in front of us. My objective is just to try to bring them back to the surface a little bit and say it is important. Truth is important. It does matter. Words matter.
It seems like they're Christian values, that they're core Christian values on which Western democracy is actually built. That all the ones that you said there, if you were to read the Bible, you're probably going to actually come up with those same things about tolerance and respect and truth and all the things that should be valued. And you talk about trust and all those elements. So it's a lot packed into your principles. And one of the people actually said that the principles are incredible. So they're thanking you for sharing those principles. They're not just principles; they're principles for life. And I think that's something that's really important. You mentioned, again, you sort of touched on leadership. And one of the things I say with athletes, I try and instill a little bit of leadership in all of them. Not everyone is born so-called to be a leader, but I have a saying that I stole off someone. I can never remember who, but I always say it's not mine, which is, great leaders don't want people to believe in them. They want the people they lead to believe in themselves.
Right.
And it's interesting you're talking about Trump as a narrative. It's all about him. When true leadership, I mean, could you imagine, and I'm going to, because I went to the Bible, could you imagine if Jesus represented himself, that it was all just about him? I don't think there's anything that would suggest that he would have had a following if he didn't make it about everyone else. And that's just the irony of and I want to call out evangelicals on this, is they're almost sold their soul to the devil and had the wool pulled over their eyes by a potentially false prophet who's spruiking something that they know they don't believe, because he's committed adultery multiple times, which is a sin by any other word, under the 10 Commandments, and thinks he can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, which is thou shalt not kill. So he obviously demonstrates daily, day in, day out. Now, the people that have to live with that, he doesn't have to live with what he chooses to believe, but others are almost blind to the fact that they're accepting that when they actually support someone like that, they're actually showing that they genuinely cannot believe what they profess to believe, because if they did, they would actually see that as something that is not what they believe, and therefore they wouldn't follow that, because that's what we were talking about before with belief. So I don't know if I presented that in a good way, or whether it is a good or bad way, but it's just a perception. By the way, if people must know, because a lot of people ask, I'm actually not a Christian, so I do understand the Bible. I do, and I'm just open about that. But the thing is I want people to, like, I think that the Bible is an inherently good book. I don't underestimate the intent of why the Bible has been written, and why those values that you talk about are actually also in the Bible. I want to talk about opportunity investment, which is one of your books, but it's also your business. So I want people to get a feel for who you are as an entrepreneur and a businessman and a multi-billionaire, and what led you down the path, because you've more or less built a system where it's win-win-win. You are helping communities that need to be lifted out of poverty. So let's talk about Dr. Jim White as a person and why you have taken that opportunity investment approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And opportunity investment is a perfect example of a policy that was released under Donald Trump's administration. And December 2017, it was referred to as the Tax Credit and Jobs Act. And I was reading the act in the United States, the Treasury, the Internal Revenue Service, and I saw a couple of provisions in that particular legislation that I found very interesting. Because, as I stated at the beginning of the show, I did not come from affluence. I am that word self-made. That is absolutely true. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to not know where your next meal is going to be tomorrow and hungry or clothes. I know that. And I know what it is. So throughout my career, I've worked around the globe. I used to buy and sell companies. I owned 23 at one time, operated in 43 countries from all walks of life, all industry, all cultures. So when I saw this particular Jobs Act, I said, people are going to say it's just for the rich cats. It's just for the Wall Street, if you will. And some of the tax cut is that. I don't agree. I say an opportunity investment. It's take a bad bill and make it better. So here is the win-win. In the United States, there's over $6 trillion of what's called unrealized capital gains that's there. It's ready to be realized. Well, what this legislation does, the Treasury Department worked with each state with the U.S. and developed these opportunity zones. There's 8,800 opportunity zones, and these are in poverty. I heard you other talk about poverty. There's over 35 million Americans that live in these zones. So the opportunity from a business perspective is if you have capital gains, that's if you sell an asset, you make any money on it in the United States, you got to pay capital gains on that. Well, the rules are very specific through this legislation. An investor can take their capital gains and invest it in a qualified opportunity fund, which we have, which we set up. It's called PHT Opportunity Fund. And the fund is working in communities to make investment in the community in every asset class, multifamily, infrastructure. We happen to be, my fund, PhD Opportunity Fund, happen to operate right now as what's called a pre-cooling or cold storage facility in an ag industry. We have a large facility in Salinas, California, that we need redevelopment. And I said, wow. And our campus, we refer to it, is right in the center of a qualified opportunities zone. So I said, well, we need to redevelop it. It's in a zone. Well, it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in this investment. It's set up a fund so we can get capital gains and absolutely get money back into the community at the same time. So that was the intent, and I'm very passionate about it because it's a way to stand up. We cannot rely on government for all of our answers in the United States, and that's the message. So we're out saying to our fellow investors, you got the money, you got the capital gains. Let's get off the sidelines. Let's look at a project, whatever asset class you're comfortable with, and start making a difference. But the project itself, it's got to be sustainable. The tax is one thing. That's just the icing on the cake. And that I'm careful to say that to people around the world. You got to have a good project. You got to have a good business plan. You got to get a good marketing plan. It's got to be real. There's no smoke and mirrors, as we say in the United States. So the project's got to stand on its own and then get the investments. So if we could get $6 trillion that's sitting in the bank on the sidelines and put it back in a business that's going to give you a above average return and make a difference in the community, I think it's a pretty good thing.
I'd say that you took an opportunity and you turned, like you said, a bad policy into a better one. You obviously pay attention to detail in the policy. You did say not everything Trump has done is necessarily bad policy.
Correct.
It's the personality and the values and the things that are brought to the presidency. So you obviously feel like that the presidency is more or less brought that role into disrepute and disarray. And I think you talk about, you said, and I picked up on it as you said it, the smoke and mirrors, that America's, isn't built on that. I think currently that's exactly what's happening, is that there is all this smoke and mirrors, and it's like a puppeteer who's playing with strings, pulling strings, and knows which strings to pull to get the effect that they want. And a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors and distraction. So I want to finish tonight, and we've had a lot of interaction from the audience and the guests. So if anyone else has any questions for Dr. White, I'd encourage you to do that. But I have a big one, because you opened up tonight the show with saying you're a Vietnam veteran, and your president has literally in the last week called some military personnel losers, and I can't remember the other word. I don't say the other word, but how, as a Vietnam veteran who also was wounded, or has a problem, because you obviously, I don't know the story, but you alluded that you were injured in Vietnam.
Correct.
When you heard the terminology, losers and suckers, I think it was, when you heard that terminology as a veteran, how did that make you feel when you heard that come from, or said to have come from the president's mouth?
Very angry, extremely angry. For a commander-in-chief to refer to our veterans, people that have lost their lives, as I'm gonna use, paraphrase some words, losers. I don't understand. Basically, I don't understand why they would do it. Be in the military. If you get captured, you're stupid. If you get killed, you're stupid. You're just a loser. And this is coming from our commander-in-chief, and this is coming from someone that worked hard, because he and I are in the same age decades, if you will, in our 70s, and he didn't go to Vietnam. He did everything he possibly could to stay out of the military service. So, for our commanders-in-chiefs to even make reference to that, it made me extremely angry. I was disappointed. It brought so much pain to the people that had served, and it showed such disrespect, not only to the American, but to all of our coalitions around the world that has lost people as well in support of different initiatives. I remember I took my first R&R in Sydney, Australia, in my first tour from Vietnam. We had a lot of Australians in Vietnam, in the area at the time in the 60s that was there. So he not only disrespects the American military, he disrespects our coalition as well when he makes that. So it made me angry. I mean, I like to use another word, but it made me angry, and I was embarrassed.
I thought I'd just raise that, because you do hear, like, I think it would be understandably so. My father is actually a Vietnam veteran as well, and was logistics in the Navy. And I wouldn't, again, say that he was a loser or a sucker or whatever terminology. These people went to fight, and they risk their lives, and some lose their lives. And to suggest for one moment that's not important, particularly in a world full of chaos, where your president's job is to actually maintain a degree of national security, as is our prime minister, and as an alliance and allies, that's exactly what we expect. And I think that alliances are shifting at the moment under this president, and I think that's where the danger lies, is when the world gets turned upside down, when alliances that were once important may not be seen as important today. So certainly there's a lot of interest in what goes on in the US with President Trump. What's going on with the election is also, impacts us, because we need to know who is going to lead the US for the next 4 years, who, while he's your, master in chief, what do you call it? Military, what is he?
Commander-in-Chief is
Yes,
Commander-in-Chief.
Commander-in-Chief. I'm thinking of Halo game days. So he's your commander-in-chief, but technically as a leader of an alliance, like the US leads the alliance, he's also technically our commander-in-chief too, because we tend to tag along with what the US foreign policy is during the period. So anyone who thinks for a moment that it doesn't impact other countries that are in that alliance, like we're part of ANZUS, the Australian, New Zealand, US treaty. That's the treaty we've signed, and went to world wars and Vietnam with. So we've stood by your side, and even Iraq and places like that. So even Afghanistan. So people need to understand that alliance is withheld for over 100 years or 100 years. Well, it has now, because we're at the 100th anniversary of the First World War several years back. So, look, got a couple more questions, and then we might look to wrap it up. So we've got Jim. If you were running against Trump, what would I think your book answers this question. What would your basic outline be to make America great again, to steal his term?
I would continue with my book. My foundation will be built based on the principles in the book, and I would do everything that I possibly could to expose and to enhance the character, more of the character. Policy, like I said, he has some pretty good ideas, policy, but it's the character. So I would build on the foundation. And the platform would be these 10 principles that I talk about in the book, and at the same time balance some economic trade and go around the world trying to regain trust again with our alliances, with our partners. They got to trust us. And so that's what I would be doing. Continue the foundation of Broken America and the 10 principles that I lay out.
Yeah, I can't read my writing. I was trying to write, but I had a question for you. I'll try and see if I can decipher what I wrote, which I can't. So I was listening to your answer, but I did have one last question. There has been a high amount of engagement, so a big shout out to all those that have been tuned in tonight to hear Dr. Jim White speak about his new book. His new book is available on Amazon. I'll actually see, I think I've got a link here, one I prepared earlier, like cooking. I've got your website there, which I've thrown up throughout the interview. People can go check out not just this book. You are a best-selling author. You did have What's My Purpose? You said 2007, and you've got multiple other books as well, so people can actually find your works. And you also have a podcast called Healing America, which you've just started online on YouTube. So I encourage people to go up and have a look. If you've liked what you've heard from Dr. Jim White today, then he has more content that he's putting out. So that journey can be a bit of fun, but you're doing it because you want to see change in America. And I really do appreciate your time. Time is our most valuable resource. You've got up early in the morning, which you actually, someone did have a question. I might go back to that and we'll finish on this one. And then I'll let you get on with your day. I hope I haven't eaten too much into anything that's
been my pleasure. I could talk to you for hours, so no problem. That's
okay. And one day down the track, we may well speak again to see how and where America has ended up, particularly after the election, and whether you can persuade some of the leaders. Actually, my questions come back to me too, so I might ask this one.
Sure.
Do you think that there's a failing on the part of, in a two-party system, of the parties to put up visionary leaders? Do you think there's a failing that the leadership that they keep selecting are not leaders that people can actually get behind?
Absolutely correct. I think that's our largest failing currently. And I say, where are the new leaders that we're developing? Both parties, in my opinion, we're not doing a very good job of developing leaders for the future. Yeah, both parties are failing miserably in that area. Our vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, look, she's in her mid 50s, female African America. Well, that's a good sign. But we've got to get more young people that wants to be in politics. But politics in America has become so angry. Your life is torn apart. The interviews that I've been doing in the book, and like I said, more positive and negative. But there's people when you start speaking up and speaking truth, people are going to take exception to it. You got to have thick skin, but you got to be doing it for the right reasons. And the right reasons is, can I make a positive difference? What can I do to be able to communicate to all Americans and all the people on the globe that we should be working together and having respect for each other? So yes, we're doing a poor job developing our future leaders.
Thank you for all your wonderful insights tonight. I wish you well with your book. I'm hoping that the result of the election, either way, that people within America accept the result. I know it's going to be questionable, but at the end of the day, it's going to need people just to realise that if whatever the system is, because the system is in place with the Electoral College as well as
right.
That is your constitution as well as the popular vote. That if the Electoral College should come back as they did last time and re-elect Donald Trump, that is the system that the four founders, question can then become down the track whether that's something that the Constitution needs to be revisited. And I know that it's something the Republican Party does not want to touch is the Electoral College, and understandably so. But again, it's part of the foundation of the American system, and I don't think the forefathers necessarily saw this, or maybe they did, and that's the other scary thing, is maybe they understood that there may be a time where this question has to be addressed by a new generation. So maybe not all doom and gloom. That's probably the thing, and maybe the next generation you're speaking to now is that I'm sure you'll be out encouraging the next generation of politics now that you talk about your grandchildren having a future in an America that you feel you want to look back to the ancestors and say, well, this is the America they wanted. Let's make sure we realize their vision. So you're in the middle of that right now. A lot of people have agreed that it is a pivotal point in history in the US. So thanks for your time, mate. Look after yourself and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you, Craig. Goodbye.
So Dr. Jim White there. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Be My Guest. I'm already organising some awesome guests for next week. I've had people reach out from all around the world to be My Guest, from Taiwan, Canada, also South Africa, and a whole interesting range of people to talk about their passions. If you want to be my guest, then by all means, you can email me at applaudible.net. So that's mail@applaudible.net. And you can, if you've got something you want to share with the world, then by all means, connect with me. Please share this across your social media with others. It will stay up on social media. If you got value out of it and you think others will, then please take time to share the live stream with your friends, or even do a watch party or something on social medias if you can. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be advised of new interviews when they're uploaded. I hope you join us again sometime. Catch you later.